You're out. We don't need you, my dad messaged. My sister replied, finally. I texted back, good timing, I just canceled your payments. At 12:05 a.m. the family chat lit up with 47 new messages and a whole lot of panic. I never expected the breakup with my family to feel like getting dumped by a boyfriend. It wasn't some dramatic fight, no screaming match over Thanksgiving dinner or ugly confrontation in the driveway. No, it came in the most anticlimactic way possible. A single message from my dad that popped up on our group chat while I was brushing my teeth. You're out. We don't need you anymore. I actually laughed when I first saw it. Like it was a joke. He had never sent anything like that before. The guy barely texted at all, unless it was asking me to transfer money to their account or reminding me to pick up mom's cholesterol meds. I stared at the message, blinking, waiting for a follow-up like LOL or just kidding, but it never came. Then my sister jumped in like she'd been waiting her whole life for this exact moment. Finally, that one hit a little harder. She and I had never been close, but I didn't realize she actually hated me. I had covered her rent twice, paid for her textbooks in college, and even helped her get a used car when hers got totaled. She'd said thank you once. Over text. The silence that followed lasted maybe 3 seconds. Then I texted back. Good timing, I just canceled your payments. And just like that I was done. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a glass of wine, and sat at the counter watching the group chat on my phone light up like it had caught fire. At exactly 12:05 a.m., I had 47 new messages waiting. I didn't read them right away. I wanted to sit with the silence a little longer. It was the first time in years I felt like I had any power in that family. Because what they didn't realize was that I had been holding their little world together for much longer than they cared to admit. It started slowly like it always does. My mom had knee surgery 5 years ago and needed someone to drive her to physical therapy twice a week. My dad was too busy with work. My sister was in college and didn't want to lose her weekend shifts. So I stepped up. Then came the grocery deliveries, the insurance paperwork, the time I left work in the middle of a meeting because mom forgot her medication and was too anxious to take the bus. The first time I paid one of their bills was because their water got shut off and they didn't have time to go to the office. That turned into a habit. Somehow I became the emergency fund, the ride service, the emotional support hotline, and the unpaid assistant all in one. But I never said no. Not once. I kept telling myself it was what family does. You don't keep score. Until they did. When my dad got promoted a month ago, everything changed. It wasn't a small bump, he was suddenly making real money for the first time in years. I only found out because my aunt mentioned it at a barbecue. That night I texted him congrats and got a thumbs up emoji back. Nothing more. Within a week, the requests started drying up. My mom canceled our weekly coffee. My sister stopped responding to my check-ins. No more, can you help us with, or, can you send, just radio silence. I thought maybe they were finally figuring things out on their own. Turns out they just didn't need me anymore. That realization hit hard. The worst part wasn't the message itself. It was the casualness of it. The way they dumped me like I was an old coat taking up space in the closet. No explanation. No gratitude. Just you're out. I spent the rest of that night making a list of every account, subscription, and recurring payment tied to me. Their phone plan, under my name. My dad's Spotify Premium, my mom's Kindle Unlimited, the Netflix account my sister used more than anyone else. All me. Gone one by one. I went into the bank app and canceled the monthly transfers I'd been sending to help with groceries and utilities. I logged into the family calendar and removed myself. Deleted the group chat from my favorites. Removed them from emergency contact lists. Blocked them from using my Uber account. Even changed the password to the Hulu account I knew they used every Sunday night. I don't think they realized how many invisible strings I was holding until I cut them. At 12:10 a.m. after I'd cleaned out the last account, I finally opened the messages. My mom had gone from confused to panicked. What do you mean canceled? What payments? My dad was trying to sound tough. We'll figure it out without you. My sister, always the star of unnecessary drama. You're being a selfish brat. Hope it was worth it. And then of course came the guilt card. After everything we've done for you. Everything they had done. I closed the app without replying. I slept better that night than I had in years. The morning after the messages, I woke up to the kind of quiet that's unnerving. Not peaceful, vacant. Like something had been ripped out of the air. I made coffee, opened my phone and stared at the group chat. 63 unread messages. I didn't open it right away. I just let it sit there, buzzing now and then like a dying fly on the windowsill. I knew what would be in those texts. Guilt trips, demands, revisionist history. Eventually, curiosity won. Started with my mom. You're really going to do this to your own family? I can't believe how ungrateful you are. We took care of you for years. Years, Rebecca. Then it turned to threats. You need to return everything you have that came from us. That car. The furniture. The things we gave you when you moved out. And then finally, you are no longer welcome in this family. That was the one that did it. It didn't even make me angry. Just hollow. The kind of message you'd expect from a landlord, not your mother. That car. I bought it. Every single payment came out of my account. The couch. A second-hand brown thing they gave me because their new one was being delivered and they didn't want to pay the haul-away fee. Everything they gave me. It was laughable. If we were keeping score, they owed me years. Rent, rides, groceries, time off work, canceled vacations, late-night pharmacy runs, and weekends spent babysitting my sister's kid so she could clear her head. I never asked for anything back. I never even asked for thanks. But they were right about one thing. I wasn't family anymore. So I made it official. First, the locks. I booked a locksmith that same afternoon. He came an hour later. I didn't just change the front door. I changed the side door, the garage keypad, even the stupid little lock on the backyard shed. Every spare key they might have had access to, I collected them all. There was still one under the fake rock in the backyard. I took it, placed it on the driveway, and crushed it with a hammer. Then I went digital. Logged into every account I'd ever helped them with. The Amazon Prime subscription I had let them use. Cancelled. The online insurance portal for mom's meds, which I'd created under my email. Changed the password. Every streaming service, gone. Every auto payment stopped. Their Uber account, which still used my old credit card. The family calendar that I had managed for years. Doctor's appointments, vet visits, birthdays. Deleted. It took about 2 hours to erase myself from their lives. But I didn't stop there. I opened the fireproof box I keep in the closet, the one with all my paperwork, bank records, and contracts, and pulled out a folder labeled Emergency. Inside was the number for Ben, my lawyer. I got him 2 years ago after a mess with a freelance client who tried to stiff me on payment. I kept him on retainer ever since. I told him everything, every transfer, every account, every bill I'd paid over the last 5 years. I asked what they could try to claim. He told me to keep records of everything, which I had. I was the kind of person who kept receipts. Always had been. I didn't trust memory. You're covered, he said. But I'd keep an eye on them. And that's when something changed in me. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was alert. Because I knew them. I knew how their minds worked. When people like that feel entitled to you for long enough, they don't know how to process rejection. They rewrite the story. Suddenly you are the villain, you owe them, you betrayed them. It doesn't matter what you've done for them. The moment you stop, they paint it like you've always been the problem. Sure enough, a few days later, my cousin sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post from my mom. It was a vague, manipulative little thing with pastel background and cursive font. Sometimes the child you sacrifice the most for is the one who turns their back when you need them most. Comments were pouring in. So sorry you're going through this, Sharon. Kids today are so selfish. You did your best. What happened? She didn't answer that one, of course. Just said, it's too painful to talk about. Please pray. She knew what she was doing. I didn't comment. I didn't message her. I didn't correct the record. That part of me, the part that wanted to explain, to justify, to prove my side, was gone. Let them tell their story. I had my receipts. And the truth. For about 2 weeks it was blissfully quiet. No texts, no calls. Not from them, not from my sister, not from the people who used to drop in and ask for favors, because you're the only one who gets it, Rebecca. I started to feel like maybe it was really over. But of course it wasn't. Because when you cut off people who are used to bleeding you dry, they don't just move on. They scheme. And one morning I opened my closet, reached for an old book I used to hide cash in as a kid, just in case of emergencies, and felt nothing inside. I flipped through the pages. I checked again. Then again. My hands started shaking. $20,000. Gone. That's when I knew. They'd been in my house. It was a Thursday morning when it happened. The kind of morning that doesn't feel like anything until it turns into everything. I had a flat tire the night before, so I decided to work from home. Around 11, I went into my closet to pull out an old folder with some paperwork for my taxes. The folder was behind a row of books I never touched anymore. My teenage collection of Bronte novels and battered poetry anthologies. One book in particular stood out, Wuthering Heights. Thick, hardbound, heavy with more than just paper. It wasn't a book. Not really. It was a vault. I had hollowed it out when I was 14, carving the center with an old X-Acto knife in my bedroom. Back then it held birthday cash and notes I didn't want my sister reading. As I got older, the habit stuck. Even after I opened a real savings account, I liked knowing I had physical cash on hand, my just-in-case money. Over the years I built it up little by little. Whenever I got a freelance bonus or unexpected refund, I added to it. 20 here, 50 there. No one knew it existed. Not even my friends. Just me. And maybe, just maybe, My mother. Years ago when I moved into this house, she'd helped me unpack. She picked up the book and laughed when it felt too light. Flipped through it. Made some comment about how I used to be sneaky. I laughed with her. I didn't think twice about it. Till now. Because when I opened that book, it was empty. I checked again. Flipped through every page. Shook it. Nothing. Then I checked the other books. The drawers. Under the floorboard I once hid a birthday card in. Every place that ever held anything important. Gone. All of it. $20,000 gone. And not a single lock was broken. No doors forced. No windows cracked. No signs of a break-in. I knew then what had happened. Knew it in the way you know a glass is about to fall before it hits the floor. They used the key. Not the front door key. I had changed all those after they cut me off. But I'd forgotten about the basement door. It had an old exterior lock we never used much, and I hadn't gotten around to replacing it. I'd given my dad that key when he came over 2 winters ago to look at a leak. I never asked for it back. They still had it. They let themselves in. Quiet. Clean. Surgical. Straight to the hiding spot. In and out. That detail chilled me more than the missing money. They hadn't come to destroy anything. They didn't take the TV or my laptop. They came for one thing. The cash. And they knew exactly where to find it. I sat on the floor for a long time. Not crying. Not yelling. Just staring at the empty book like it might change its mind and give it back. Then I got up, locked the basement door manually, and called the police. They sent over a patrol officer to take the report. He was sympathetic but honest. Without surveillance or signs of forced entry, it'd be hard to press charges. I gave them names anyway. Told them who I believed had done it, how they would have entered, what they would have taken. When he left, I called Ben, my lawyer. He came over the next morning. Brought a notepad, asked questions, and looked more furious than I did. You have records of the cash withdrawals? Everyone. And proof the money existed, that it was in the house? I pulled out the photo. Years ago, I'd taken a picture of the hollowed book as a joke for a friend. It showed the stash half full with a caption that said, "My teenage paranoia paid off." That was enough for Ben. He drafted a letter that same day. A demand for repayment of stolen funds with a 5-day deadline, or we'd file for civil theft and pursue restitution through court. The letter was direct, unemotional, and cold in a way that made me feel for the first time in a while like I had real armor. I sent the letter via certified mail. Then I waited. 2 days later, my sister broke the silence. Not my parents, my sister. She messaged me directly. "Seriously? You're suing mom and dad? Are you out of your mind? They're having a rough time. You have money. What's the big deal?" It was so casual. So dismissive. Like it was just a misunderstanding. Like they were owed that money. I didn't respond. A few hours later, she followed up. "You're being cruel. You know they wouldn't do that if they weren't desperate. You're still part of this family whether you like it or not." I stared at that last line for a long time. Still part of this family. That's when I understood. To them, family didn't mean love. It meant access. Access to favors. Access to money. Access to me. And for the first time in my life, I realized they never saw me as a daughter. They saw me as a resource. And now that resource was fighting back. They weren't going to let that go without a fight. And neither was I. On the 5th day after Ben sent the demand letter, I got the confirmation email that they'd received it. Signed for. Visual. Still no response from them. No call. No apology. No explanation. Just a silence that felt loaded. I thought maybe they were stalling, trying to figure out what to do. Maybe they were scrambling for the money. Maybe they were embarrassed. But that illusion shattered 2 days later. I was making lunch when someone started banging on my front door. Not knocking. Banging. I didn't even need to look. I already knew it was my sister. She hadn't contacted me directly in weeks, outside of that one text trying to guilt-trip me. Now she was outside my house shouting like we were in a reality show. "You're seriously doing this? You're suing mom and dad?" I stood behind the door out of view. Let her yell. I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of a face-to-face fight. Their family, Rebecca. You don't sue your own family. I didn't answer. He kept going. You know why they did it. You know they wouldn't have done that unless they needed to. Still I said nothing. Then she said the part that told me everything I needed to know. They only took it because they knew you were hiding it from them. I stopped breathing. That wasn't a guess. That was a slip. She just admitted it. She tried to backtrack, yelling something about being pushed too far, and "You've always been selfish," but I'd already heard what I needed. Eventually she left, muttering curses loud enough for the neighbors to hear. I called Ben immediately. "We go forward," I said. He didn't hesitate. Within 24 hours he filed the next round of legal action. Civil theft, demand for restitution, and reimbursement of legal fees. This was no longer just a warning shot. We were going in. And that's when my parents finally responded. But not with an apology. Through their attorney, they admitted to taking the money, but claimed it wasn't theft. It was reimbursement. They argued that the money I kept in my house was, in their words, a portion of long overdue familial debts. My father said I had benefited financially and emotionally from decades of support, and it was reasonable for them to claim some of that back now that they were in need. My mother claimed that caring for me into adulthood had placed a financial burden on them they were never compensated for. They cited old grocery bills, utilities from when I lived at home, even wear and tear on their vehicle from years of errands and appointments. It was laughable, until they took it further. They filed a countersuit. They were suing me for accumulated unpaid support and services. They listed a spreadsheet of costs they believed I owed them. Some of it made up entirely, some of it distorted beyond recognition. My sister even included a claim of personal distress for being exposed to the toxic behavior of a sibling. She demanded compensation. I sat in Ben's office holding that paperwork like it was from another planet. "This is insane," I said. He didn't disagree. "It's strategic," he said. "They're hoping you'll panic, drop your suit and settle privately. This is about making you scared." But the effect was the opposite. I felt clear. They didn't just steal from me, they wanted to flip the story. Twist the truth until I was the bad guy. And the more I thought about it, the more I realized how often they'd done that before. Like when I stopped giving them monthly money and they claimed I was withholding help. Or when I didn't drive my mom to her appointment on 2 hours' notice, and she told the family I'd abandoned her. Every time I set a boundary, they called it betrayal. And now they were trying to bury me under paperwork and fake claims. So I started preparing. I went through my records, pulled bank statements, screenshots, old emails. I dug through years of receipts, calendars, financial transfers. I built a timeline. Meanwhile, something else was happening that they didn't expect. People were finding out. My cousin reached out. Then my aunt. Then a woman my mom used to play cards with at the community center. The story was leaking because my sister couldn't keep her mouth shut. She'd been venting to anyone who would listen, trying to gather sympathy. But it wasn't working. Because the more people heard, the worse it sounded. They took what? They broke into her house? They stole her savings and now they're suing her? It was spreading. Quietly but fast. And my parents were starting to feel it. My aunt called me in tears. Said she'd confronted my mother and my mother had broken down, saying I was trying to destroy the family. That I was twisting things to make them look like monsters. But I didn't have to twist anything. They'd done it all on their own. Ben called later that week with more news. The forensic accounting of their finances, yes, we requested it, showed they weren't struggling. Not even close. They had money in retirement accounts, a rental property paid off, and several months' worth of savings untouched. They weren't drowning. They were just mad they didn't have access to mine. They didn't do this because they needed the money, Ben said. They did it because they felt entitled to it. He was right. It was never about desperation. It was about control. And now, with the truth unraveling in public and the court date approaching, that control was slipping out of their hands. They weren't going to let that happen quietly. And I had no idea just how ugly they were about to get. The end didn't come in a courtroom. It came in whispers, screenshots, and public humiliation. After my parents filed the countersuit, everything started leaking. I didn't tell a soul, but my sister couldn't keep quiet. She needed validation too badly. She told one cousin her version of events, how I'd gone crazy, and sued our own parents over a misunderstanding. But then that cousin shared the messages, the actual messages, and suddenly the story didn't fit. It spread like wildfire. My dad's text, "You're out. We don't need you anymore." My sister's reply, "Finally." My response, "Good timing, I just canceled your payments." It all ended up in our extended family group chat. And from there it went further, to old family friends, to neighbors, even to people from their church. Within days, my parents' perfect reputation was collapsing in slow motion. My aunt called me first, her voice a mix of disbelief and fury. "Rebecca, is it true? They took money from you." I didn't deny it. I didn't explain it either. I just said, "There's a case pending. Everything will come out soon." That silence on the line told me enough. He knew. By the end of the week, people were talking. Someone sent me a photo of my mom at the local grocery store, arguing with a woman near the produce section. The woman had asked, "Is it true you stole from your daughter?" My mom apparently burst into tears and left the cart behind. It would have been sad if it weren't so predictable. They'd built their entire identity around being the good family. The ones who hosted holidays, donated to church, posted smiling photos every Sunday morning. Now everyone knew it was an act. Ben, my lawyer, was relentless. Every email from him felt like progress. He'd found proof that my parents weren't in financial trouble at all. Multiple accounts, a rental property, even an investment fund. The idea that they had needed the money was a lie. They hadn't been desperate. They'd been greedy. That made me angrier than the theft itself. They could have asked for help. I might have said yes even after everything. But they didn't. They just took. The hearing was scheduled for the following week, but before it even began, their lawyer reached out. He sounded tired, almost defeated. He said they wanted to settle quietly. They'd return the full amount plus part of my legal costs if I agreed to confidentiality. Ben looked at me across the table. "It's your call," he said. "You've already won technically. This just decides how public it gets." I didn't even hesitate. "No deal," I said. "We're finishing this properly." He smiled just barely. "That's what I thought you'd say." 3 days later we received official notice. They were withdrawing their countersuit, returning the full $20,000, covering partial fees, and providing a written admission of taking the money without explicit consent. It was the legal equivalent of waving a white flag. They hadn't apologized. They hadn't even called. But they'd been forced to admit the truth on paper, where it couldn't be twisted or rewritten. That was enough. Ben and I signed the paperwork the next morning. As soon as it was filed, I transferred his fee and closed the folder that had lived on my kitchen counter for weeks. The case was done. But the fallout wasn't. Because once the settlement became public record, the rest of the story spread. People who'd once defended my parents stopped returning their calls. The neighbors stopped waving. Even their pastor reportedly encouraged them to take some time away from the congregation. In other words, they were quietly exiled. I didn't celebrate. There was nothing to celebrate. Just a kind of exhausted calm. A silence that wasn't peaceful but final. The money appeared back in my account 10 days later. I stared at the numbers, remembering how hard I'd worked for every dollar. I should have felt relieved. But all I felt was tired. That same night my sister texted. "Happy now. You win." No apology. No ownership. Just resentment. I deleted the message and blocked her number. Then I did the same to my parents. Changed my locks again, even installed a camera system. I wanted to make absolutely sure they'd never cross that threshold again. A week later I got one last piece of news. Their rental property, the one they'd been using as a side income, had fallen through. The tenants moved out after finding out what they'd done. Apparently they didn't want to rent from the couple who stole from their own daughter. That's when I realized karma sometimes doesn't come crashing in all at once. Sometimes, it just dismantles people slowly, piece by piece, until they're left with exactly what they deserve: silence, shame, and each other. It should have felt good. But it didn't. Winning against your own family doesn't feel like victory. It feels like cutting off a limb to stop the infection. When people ask what I learned from it, I never give them the full story. I just say this: if your own parents are willing to steal from you for money, you'll never look at love the same way again. Because once the people who raised you prove they'd rather have your wallet than your trust, you start to wonder if anyone, friends, lovers, anyone, is ever really safe to let in. It would have been easier if they had just disappeared. Faded into the background. Learned the lesson, sat in their shame, and moved on like normal people with even a shred of decency. But that's not how people like them operate. For a few weeks after the settlement there was quiet. No messages, no sightings, no more ridiculous legal stunts. The money was back in my account. Their names were blocked in my phone. I'd installed new locks, a camera system, and made sure not a single key outside of mine even existed anymore. It should have been over. But people like my parents don't know when to leave. It started with little things. A birthday card in the mail. Unsigned, but I recognized the handwriting. The same bubbly cursive my mom used when she used to leave notes in my lunchbox. An email to my work account, from a throwaway address with just the subject line: "Are you happy now?" Then a cousin called to say she ran into my mom at the bank. Apparently my mom was still telling people we were just going through a rough patch. That the whole thing had been a big misunderstanding that got out of hand. That she hoped one day Rebecca would come to her senses and come home. Home. As if that place had ever been safe. But the real breaking point came on a Sunday afternoon. Late fall. I'd just gotten back from a long hike, the air crisp, the leaves half dead on the trees. I turned onto my street and saw a familiar car parked just past my driveway. Brown Honda. Dent in the rear bumper. Front license plate slightly crooked. My dad's car. I froze in the middle of the street. Just stood there, sweat drying on my neck, hands still wrapped around my empty water bottle. My mother stepped out first. Like this was normal. Like she just happened to be in the area and thought she'd say hello. She looked older. Thinner. Hair grayer than I remembered. She smiled like nothing had happened. My dad stayed in the driver's seat. Of course he did. She started walking toward me, slowly, cautiously. Hands folded in front of her like she was making herself small, non-threatening. She stopped about 10 feet away, just outside the reach of my property line. I didn't speak. I didn't blink. She said my name once. I said nothing. Then she said, "Can we talk? Just talk." And that was when I realized something important. They still thought there was a version of this where they could be forgiven. Where I'd let them explain, cry, maybe offer a shaky apology, and we'd all go back to playing house. They didn't understand the difference between hurt and done. I wasn't hurt anymore. I was done. I turned and walked back the way I came. I didn't say a word. Didn't even look back. I circled the block, came back around, and waited at the corner until I saw their car pull away. Later that night, she left a voicemail. It was short. "We just want to make things right. We didn't realize how far this would go." She still didn't get it. It didn't go anywhere. They took it there. They opened that door, crossed that line, emptied that book, and then had the nerve to act surprised when I didn't roll over like I used to. The next morning I changed my number. That same day I put my house on the market. 3 weeks later it was sold. I moved to a new city, new house, new locks, no trace of them. I made sure not even the mail forwarding included their last name. I changed my emergency contacts. Wrote a new will. Updated everything. Clean slate. They don't know where I live now. They never will. The hollowed-out book came with me, but it doesn't hold money anymore. Now it holds copies of everything. The lawsuit, the settlement, the email logs, the texts. I keep it not because I'm afraid, but because I'm done explaining. If anyone ever tries to rewrite this story, I have the original script. And people did try to rewrite it. A former neighbor called me once. Said she'd seen my mom crying on her porch, saying she missed her daughter. Asked if maybe I could find it in my heart to talk to them again. I told her I had found it in my heart, to leave and not look back. That was the last time anyone asked. Funny thing is, people like my parents rely on silence. They count on the fact that most kids won't talk about what happens behind closed doors. That will protect the image, swallow the pain, let them carry the narrative because it's easier than tearing it all down. But they picked the wrong daughter for that. They used me for years. My money, my time, my guilt, my silence. And when I stopped giving, they took. When I tried to hold them accountable, they retaliated. And when they lost, they still came crawling back. Not to make amends, but to regain control. The difference now is that I know who they are. And I know who I am without them. Stronger. Calmer. Sharper. Quieter maybe, but not silent. Because when people show you how little your trust means to them, you stop speaking their language. You speak in closed doors. In unlisted addresses. In changed numbers and unreturned voicemails. And when they finally show up on your street trying to test that last boundary, you let them see your face one final time. Just long enough for them to realize the door they're knocking on no longer leads anywhere they're welcome. And then, you walk away. For good. The final big update. I really thought that was it. New city. New home. New number. I changed everything. No one knew where I was. No shared locations. No public social media. I was finally free. Or so I thought. 6 months after I moved, a letter showed up at my mailbox. Not an email. Not a phone call. A physical letter, handwritten, no return address. Just my first name on the envelope, spelled correctly in the exact way my mother always used. The soft A at the end, not the harder spelling everyone else always defaulted to. I stared at it for a while. Didn't open it right away. Didn't even touch it. I walked inside, set it on the counter, and stared at it like it might explode. Part of me wanted to burn it without reading. But curiosity won. Inside was a single page. No greeting. No date. Just this. We're selling the house. Things have changed. You should come by before it's gone. You might want to see it one last time. Some of your things are still here. No name. But I didn't need one. It was them. What surprised me most was not the attempt to reach out. It was the tone. Like nothing had happened. Like we were still just a normal family with loose ends to tie up. As if breaking into my home, stealing from me, lying, countersuing me, then ambushing me outside my house hadn't ended everything. I didn't respond. But it got under my skin. Selling the house meant they were serious. Maybe they were moving. Maybe trying to downsize after the damage. Maybe trying to run from it. I didn't care. I didn't need anything from that house. But something about it itched at me. The idea of them boxing up what little evidence of me still remained and tossing it out like trash. So I made a decision. I drove back one last time. Didn't go to the house. Didn't contact anyone. I just parked a block away. Walked by like I was a stranger. Hoodie up. Head down. It was empty. The porch was bare. No furniture. No wind chimes. Curtains gone. For sale sign out front. Grass dead. Paint flaking at the windows. The place looked hollowed out. Like it had aged 20 years in 6 months. And in that moment I felt nothing. Not sadness. Not nostalgia. Just a weird, quiet satisfaction. Like watching a movie set being torn down after the final scene. They weren't home. The lights were off. The garage door was halfway open. Inside I could see a few cardboard boxes stacked near the wall. I kept walking. That night I wrote a letter of my own. Just one sentence. There's nothing left for me to collect. I didn't send it. Just folded it up, tucked it inside the old hollow book and sealed it shut for good. A few weeks later I got word through someone distant. They'd moved out of state. Smaller place. No friends nearby. No social ties left. My sister moved in with some guy she barely knew and stopped answering their calls. Their world had finally gotten small enough to match the size of their choices. Me. I started over. Truly this time. I joined a running group. Got back into freelancing. Made friends who didn't ask about my family because I didn't bring them up. No more defending them. No more hoping they'd change. Just living. One night I sat on my back porch watching the sun disappear behind the trees. It was quiet still and I realized something. The story didn't end when I cut them off. It ended when I stopped waiting for an apology. It ended when I stopped needing them to understand. And in that space, where the pain used to be, there was finally room for something else. Peace. Not because they gave it to me, because I built it myself. And no one gets to take that away again.